A beloved former school teacher and wife of a small-town mayor.
Charlotte was very compassionate about students and very well liked.
She was a wonderful mother.
Found murdered in her home.
It inflamed the community because of how popular she was.
Detectives find evidence of a violent struggle.
She had been savagely attacked.
You could see that her wrist was broke.
Who would kill this loving wife and mother?
There was nobody that you could think of that would want her dead.
It's going to be one of those cases of a whodunit.
Suspicions run rampant in this small town.
People are trying to help the police crack this case, but it's just all of these rumors and innuendo.
Somebody was at a party bragging about killing Charlotte.
He was spending money like it was going out of style.
A lady reported that her boyfriend tried to strangle her. We're thinking that's a very good suspect.
Police close in, but a public accusation upends the case.
He gave a statement on live radio accusing him of the murder.
They said they finally realized who killed her.
He was in shock.
I never would have expected them to be a suspect that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
Lynette, Alabama, a small family-oriented town in the heart of the Deep South.
Lynette was a mill town. It sits right on the banks of the Chattahoochee River, one of Alabama's major waterways. I always felt safe when I was there.
Some people would leave their homes unlocked, but we just never had any crime there.
Lynette is a very tight-knit area. Everybody knows everybody here.
August 4th, 1998 was a lazy summer day in Lynette until the peace was shattered by a 911 call.
It was around 5:30 when we got the call of an unresponsive woman.
Police are surprised to learn the call has come from the home of the town's mayor.
Everyone was shocked that it was their house, and I was there within 2 or 3 minutes.
The 911 caller, Heather Waits, leads police inside to her unresponsive mother.
Heather was very hysterical, and the first thing she could say was, "Help my mom." The first thing I did was go and check for a pulse, and she was cool to the touch. And you could tell that she's been expired for a little while.
Police are stunned to find Charlotte Waits, the wife of the town's mayor, dead in her home. At first, it appears that Charlotte has suffered a tragic accident.
We noticed she did have a little foam coming out the corner of her mouth, so we thought that, maybe had a seizure or a reaction to a medicine.
As detectives look closer, they begin to suspect foul play.
There was red flags that this was more than just an accident.
Her right arm in the wrist area appeared to be broken. She had what appeared to be scratch marks on the bottom of her chin, and she had some red markings around her neck. We made a decision right then that we're going to proceed with a homicide investigation.
Detectives find signs of a violent struggle.
There was a picture that had been knocked off the wall. We could see the nail that was holding that picture up was bent down towards the stairway. So my theory is that it was a fight coming down the stairs.
It just looked suspicious. The fact that her purse was dumped over, but her purse was still there. You couldn't tell if it was a stage scene or if somebody had come in and she had interrupted a burglary.
Was Charlotte the victim of a robbery gone wrong, or did her killer want it to appear that way?
We didn't see any signs of forced entry. One of the investigators went to the utility room and found 2 bloody towels. So we want to find out who might have bled on those towels.
As forensics collect evidence, Charlotte's husband, Barry, arrives on the scene.
Barry worked at the National Guard Armory. At the time, Barry was the acting mayor.
The look on his face, he was in shock. He was very, very upset.
He started hyperventilating, grabbing his chest. He began to go into what we thought was a heart attack.
As Barry is rushed to the hospital, news of Charlotte's murder spreads.
I remember the state of shock that I felt when I got down there to the emergency room. The girls were there, and of course they were upset. Their mother was dead, and their daddy was under a doctor's care for heart issues.
Investigators turned to Charlotte's daughters for information about their mother.
Charlotte was a very kind, gentle person, always smiling, and cared about others.
Charlotte studied education at Auburn University and got married to Barry Waits right after graduating in 1971.
She was a second-grade teacher. She was very compassionate about her students and just very well liked.
Later, Charlotte became a devoted school administrator.
She was genuine through and through. She just made such a nice reputation for herself in the school system and in the community as well. Barry was head of the National Guard Armory, and he would often let us use the armory for the science fair, social studies fair. And Charlotte, she was always there helping me with everything.
Charlotte and Barry had the perfect marriage. 2 great careers, and they had 2 daughters. Heather was going to college, and Kara was still in high school, getting ready to graduate.
When you was around them, you could feel the love. They were well respected in this community.
Charlotte was a wonderful mother. I could tell what a deep love she had for her family.
Who would take the life of this kind and caring woman, and why? Detectives question Heather about how she came to find her mother's body.
Heather came home for the weekend. As a college kid, it's time to get your clothes washed and get some good home cooking.
Heather said she came into the house, and then when she called out for her mom, and that's when she noticed her mom at the bottom of the stairs. And when she run up to her, she realized that she wasn't breathing.
And when she felt cold, she began to panic. And then that's when she called the ambulance. And then she called her dad.
Police are eager to question the mayor, but doctors say they want to keep him overnight for observation.
We did find out that he didn't have a heart attack. It was an anxiety-type situation. But we were never able to talk to Barry while he was in the hospital. He got out the next day. On Saturday morning following the murder, we were at the office, myself, the other investigators, and then all of a sudden Barry walks in.
When it's this type of murder, it's usually someone very close to him at the same time. Nobody would ever suspect the mayor of doing anything like this. Anyone that knew Barry knew that he's like a big teddy bear.
My knowledge of Barry at that point, I'd never seen him upset. He was just friendly and well respected. Barry didn't fit any kind of profile to do this kind of crime. But we did take the opportunity to just look over him while we were talking to him, see if we could see any visible injuries, and we could not.
Barry offers to help with the investigation and agrees to be interviewed. Detectives ask him for his whereabouts the previous day.
He told us that in the morning he had gone to the armory, just had a normal day. Around 11 or so, he left the armory and gone by the barbershop. He said it was full, so he went back to work the rest of the day until he received a phone call from his daughter telling him that she had found her mother. So he rushed home.
Investigators hope to verify the mayor's alibi, but they haven't established a clear timeline for Charlotte's murder.
The first day of business after the homicide, the only thing we had was a victim in a neighborhood that these things don't happen. It's going to be one of those cases of a whodunit.
Nobody disliked Miss Waits, and there was definitely nobody that you could think of that would want her dead.
As fear grips the town of Lynette, suspicion starts to fall on someone close to Charlotte's daughter.
Through talking to family, we had learned that Kara was dating a boy that her parents really didn't like because he was living a rough life, hand to mouth. Barry and Charlotte both told her that she was not going to see him. And then, of course, they learned that she was seeing him behind their back. At the time of the murder, Kara was still in high school and she was pregnant. I believe that Charlotte knew that Kara was pregnant.
Investigators wonder if there had been a deadly confrontation between Charlotte and her daughter's lover.
People have been killed for less Maybe he thought, hey, I want to see your daughter, you're not letting me, so you're going to pay for it.
Coming up, the list of suspects grows.
People start calling the tip lines or saying, well, so-and-so told me so-and-so.
And small-town secrets are revealed.
He had been to prison for violent crimes.
People are starting to say, you're maybe not the person we thought that you were.
Then, new evidence stuns investigators.
He's got a money issue, and that's a flag.
But the prints did not match.
I can't put this behind me until it's solved.
You may think that you know who did the crime, but you may be wrong.
Just 24 hours into the investigation of Charlotte Waite's murder, police have their first suspect. Her 17-year-old daughter's boyfriend.
We had learned that at the time of the murder, Kara was pregnant.
Her boyfriend just wasn't the person that they wanted their daughter to be dating. So maybe there had been some type of conflict.
Police bring him into the station for questioning.
He told us that he knew that Barry and Charlotte didn't like him, but he said that the day of the murder, he was working with a grass cutting crew somewhere. We were able to go to the person that he was working for that day, and they verified his whereabouts through the entire day of the murder.
With Kara's boyfriend looking unlikely as the killer, detectives take a closer look at Kara.
The day of the murder of Kara, we determined that she was at work babysitting. Then we started looking at Heather. We were able to show that she was at Auburn University. She had actually left 20, 30 minutes prior to finding her mother. We eliminated her.
It's been less than 2 days since Charlotte Waits was found dead, and the investigation is under intense scrutiny from the public and the media.
We did have a lot of pressure put on us from the beginning because it's the mayor's wife. He's a pillar of the community, and she's a pillar of the community.
With this case being such a high-profile nature, there was a lot of eyes looking at us.
I was the host of the morning show on WRLD radio. We were getting calls from people all over the county. I knew Charlotte's family real well. There was so much speculation at the time.
Under the close watch of the media, police turn their attention back to the mayor's alibi.
On any homicide, when your victim is married, you will start inside and then you work your way out. We wanted to find out the timeline of his whereabouts to eliminate him as being a suspect.
Barry claims that on the day of the murder, he left work around 11:30 a.m. to run an errand, then returned.
Barry said that once he got back to the armory, that he sent a fax to his commander. We traveled to Birmingham to verify who he sent the fax to, and it showed us that Barry got back to the armory at the time that he said he did.
Police confirm Barry's fax receipt has a 12:30 p.m. timestamp, but investigators still don't know the exact time of Charlotte's murder. While they wait for the autopsy results, they hope Charlotte's coworkers can help provide the answer.
The people that Charlotte worked with told us that Charlotte had gotten to work that morning, and that afternoon they were having a baby shower for one of her coworkers. They told us that she left around 11 or so.
And she comes home to get fixed up to go out to the little baby shower.
They told us that they were getting ready to order out lunch and try to get in touch with her to find out what she wanted. Couldn't get an answer.
No one saw Charlotte again until Heather discovered her body nearly 6 hours later.
Our office was horrified. We just couldn't wrap our minds around the fact that our little ray of sunshine was dead. Sergeant Richard Carter was asking us a lot of questions, like, did Charlotte and Barry get along? Charlotte and Barry were always teasing with each other, and he was always being silly and funny, and she would roll her eyes at him, and they didn't appear to have any problems. We said what a wonderful husband he had been, and what a good daddy.
Investigators hope to get more information about Barry and Charlotte's relationship from their daughters.
We want to find out more about the dynamics of the family. But when the daughters realized that we were looking at their father as the suspect, they became upset with us. So They broke contact, and we've lost contact with them. When we were speaking to her friends and her family, nobody could provide anyone who could have a reason to kill Charlotte.
Hitting dead ends, investigators dig deeper and begin to look beyond Charlotte's immediate family. They request an interview with her brother, Gene.
Gene said he loved his sister tremendously, and her entire family. He talked about him and Barry being like brothers.
Then, Gene reveals a key piece of information.
Charlotte had an uncle that had passed away. Written into the inheritance, Charlotte got 50%.
And we're talking several hundred acres here, which is worth a good bit of money. At this time, they're starting to build auto manufacturing areas here, and you can get lots of money for selling land or land rights.
Gene tells police that the inheritance caused problems in the extended family.
There was this cousin who felt like he deserved part of that estate. So he was contesting the will.
I've actually had to try murder cases where people have shot each other over property lines, and that's nothing compared to thousands and thousands of dollars worth of property. And so you've got heightened tension.
Gene also tells investigators that Charlotte was due to meet her attorney about the inheritance on the day she was killed.
We don't believe in coincidence that on the day she was supposed to have a meeting with an attorney is the day that she was murdered. And at that point, Charlotte's cousin became suspect number one.
Detectives investigating the murder of Charlotte Waits have discovered she was about to inherit a large tract of land from her uncle, leaving another family member angry.
Charlotte's cousin, Wayne Rice, felt that he was entitled to part of it, and we're talking a substantial good bit of property.
She did not like conflict. And the day of the murder, she was supposed to have a meeting with an attorney. Of course, she never made the meeting.
Detectives want to know if Wayne went to Charlotte's home to confront her before the meeting.
Maybe he thought if she was eliminated, he would have more opportunity for him to get more money out of it. When we contacted Wayne, he agreed to meet with us, but not without his attorney present.
Police ask Wayne how he feels about being left out of the family inheritance.
He knew that disputing that will caused broken relationships, but he said that he didn't wish any ill will on Charlotte.
Investigators ask for his whereabouts on the day of the murder.
Wayne had told us that he'd gone to work early that morning. He'd gotten off work, gone home. We wanted to find out, did he have any opportunity to come to Lynette, commit the murder, and leave with nobody seeing him. We talked to 3 of his co-workers, and they confirmed that he never left, didn't even leave for lunch.
With Wayne ruled out, police go back to the drawing board.
Once we were able to eliminate Wayne, we were kind of left, again, at point A. Who could commit this crime and leave and nobody see anything out of the ordinary?
2 weeks after Charlotte's murder, detectives received the autopsy report.
The pathologist explained that it was a strangulation.
The report concludes that the murder weapon was a piece of Charlotte's own clothing.
Miss Waits had on a blouse that kind of had the little strings that went across it, and those strings actually created the ligature mark around her neck. And were pulled from behind.
The autopsy also confirms that Charlotte suffered other injuries in the attack.
She was thrown to the floor in such a violent manner that she suffered a dislocated wrist and a head injury that by itself could have killed her.
And the report suggests that Charlotte was struck in the face.
The doctor felt like she was punched, which could have subdued her.
The blood on the towels found at the scene is identified as Charlotte's.
The bloody towels were kind of stuck down in the bottom and covered up, like somebody was trying to hide them.
I would have to describe the last few minutes of Charlotte's life as complete terror. She had been savagely attacked.
Police receive the crime scene fingerprint analysis and discover a print that doesn't belong.
And we get the fingerprint report back, and then there's some unidentified fingerprints. We can't put a suspect with those fingerprints.
Police run the prints through the Alabama State database, but it doesn't produce a match.
This is so frustrating because you owe it to the victim's family to go make that arrest and always hoping that we're going to get that silver bullet that's going to put it all together, and you never get it.
Then, just a few days later, a local report of a violent assault draws detectives' attention.
Our patrol guys got a call one night to a residence in regards to a lady that called and reported that her boyfriend, Rodney Borum, tried to strangle her. When the officer wrote up the report, he said, "This looks awfully familiar to the case that you're working on."
Detectives interview the victim and are struck by the similarities in the attack.
She reported to the police officers that her boyfriend attacked her from behind, tried to strangle her, but she was able to get away from him.
We knew Miss Waits had been choked from behind, so you have to look at that.
Is this an isolated case or an ongoing pattern of violent attacks?
We realized that he had actually had a pretty extensive criminal history from another state. He had been to prison numerous times for violent type crimes. So we were extremely interested in Rodney.
Police obtain Rodney's prints from the Georgia State database.
We sent those off to the crime lab to compare with the prints that were lifted at the crime scene. When we spoke to Rodney, it was explained to him that this crime looked a lot like what took place with Charlotte. So he knew without a doubt why we were questioning him.
As police look into Rodney's claim that he was working on the day of the murder, the lab comes back with fingerprint results.
We got notified that Rodney Borum's prints did not match. And through his alibi, we were able to eliminate him from being in the area that day.
Police can't charge Rodney for the alleged assault on his girlfriend due to lack of evidence, so they let him go. Once again, the investigation hits a dead end.
You have to keep an open mind. Always be ready for something that's going to take you down a different path.
A few days later, a stunning piece of information comes in on the police tip line.
We'd gotten a tip that there was a man at a party bragging about killing Charlotte.
The tipster claims he overheard someone named Kenny Boyd confess to the crime.
He said that he had been at a party with Kenny Boyd, and that Kenny Boyd had told him that he had gone in to rob Miss Waits, and that she caught him burglarizing the house.
We thought this is what we needed. This is the tip that we need. It's going to get us where we need to be.
When police go to locate Kenny, they don't have to look very far.
When we went and found him, he was inside our county jail.
It's been almost 2 months since the murder of Charlotte Waits, and a witness claims he recently overheard Kenny Boyd confess to the crime.
We were told that Kenny Boyd was at a party bragging about killing Charlotte.
The witness also tells police that Kenny had an accomplice.
Kenny told them that they were breaking in Charlotte's house. Then Charlotte came home. They jumped her, killed her. Didn't mean to kill her, but did.
The two suspects are well known to police.
They were always in trouble, in and out of jail.
Detectives head to Lynette County Jail, where Kenny has been in custody for several days on an unrelated charge.
We got inside the jail, sat down in a cell, began interviewing Kenny Boyd. He said he didn't know her, and he said he did not commit the murder. He said, I don't even know where they live, but we want to find out what it was he did that day. Kenny begins to tell us that they are out going to a local store stealing cigarettes, and then they're going into a different part of town selling them for crack.
Detectives are skeptical of the account and want to hear what Kenny's partner in crime has to say.
We find out that the other suspect's in prison in Georgia. So we traveled into Georgia, and he tells us basically the same story. He says, yeah, we were stealing cigarettes.
With identical stories from two suspects, investigators look to confirm their alibi.
To verify his alibi, the only thing we can do is go to the store that he said that they were stealing cigarettes from.
Police searched the store's security footage for proof the men were there.
At the time of the murder, it was documented on video that they are inside that store that he said they were in. It was very frustrating. You may think that you know who did the crime, but you may be wrong.
Later on, we found out the guy that had called the tip line on Kenny Boyd just basically didn't like Mr. Boyd.
Police are increasingly concerned that the tip line may be doing more harm than good.
That's the thing about a small town, and everybody knows everybody, and people start calling the tip line saying, well, so-and-so told me so-and-so.
Through this entire case, we would continually get tips. At times we felt like they were good tips, credible. Other times we knew that they were just trying to meddle in the case. The hardest thing was all the different rabbit trails that we kept having to go down because every single tip that we got, we had to chase it.
That's slowing the investigation down to a crawl, because at a trial, you've got to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that somebody committed this crime. And to do that, you've got to disprove all of these bad tips and the rumors and innuendo.
With the investigation at a standstill, the public is increasingly angry that no arrest has been made in the 6 months since Charlotte's murder.
The people in this community were frightened. Any murder in a small town, people here know everybody, so you got a lot of pressure when you got a case like this.
The fact that Charlotte was so well known inflamed the community. I think there was a lot of angst because of how popular she was and how gentle she was.
My heart still ached. It was awful. I would go to her grave and wonder if your murderer comes here and looks. And at this grave, she was my dear friend. And I can't put this behind me until it's solved.
The pressure never lessened on this case. The community demanded that somebody gets brought to justice on this case.
As months turn into years without justice being served, Charlotte's loved ones carry on as best they can. Barry Waits is no longer mayor, but he continues to serve on Lynette City Council. His daughters, Heather and Kara, have both moved out of town.
The girls went on with their lives. Heather got married, and Barry moved on with his life. And he eventually remarried.
Every investigator always has one case that stays with them. You go to bed with it, you wake up with it. I never considered it a cold case because it always sat on my desk. It consumes you, especially in a small town, when you know the people involved.
3 years after Charlotte's murder, a bizarre development puts the case back in the spotlight.
Barry was on our city council, and Barry decided to run for re-election. Well, there was a gentleman who lived in the county who decided to run against Barry.
The person running for city council against Barry Waits at that time, his name was Rod Spraggins.
Rod was a bail bondsman. He was very well known throughout the community.
While on the campaign trail, Rod Spraggins makes a stunning statement in the local press.
Rod was quoted in the paper as saying that he was 100% convinced that Barry Waits had killed Charlotte.
3 years after the murder of Charlotte Waits, Rod Spraggins has publicly declared that he knows who killed her.
Rod said, Charlotte came to me in a dream and told me that Barry's the one that killed her.
Rod Spraggins gave a statement on live radio accusing Barry of the murder. And we got a lot of calls on that, you know. You got people openly saying it on the radio. Why can't y'all make an arrest?
Rod's comments raise eyebrows, but police are suspicious of his motives.
I think it might not have been taken as seriously knowing it was Rod.
Rod Spraggins he's a con man. One of those that just stirred up stuff. and I don't know what his intent was, but in our eyes as investigators, Rod had no evidence.
But then, Rod's rash allegation sparks an unexpected development in the case. As talk about Barry Waite spreads, new rumors emerge about a hidden and disturbing side of the former mayor.
I kept hearing these rumors. Barry was the caretaker of his mother's savings account. And it was my understanding that out of $100,000, there was $100 and some change left in the account.
We found out that his mother was actually losing her house. And people started to look at him going, man, you're maybe not the person we thought that you were.
Police decide to take a closer look at Barry's finances.
As we're pulling banking records, I discover where Barry had taken $12,000 out of his mother's account, put it into his personal account, and spent the money. And this had been prior to the murder. So I think he's stealing from his mother. Where did the money go?
You know, if you'll steal from your mother, you'll steal from anybody.
Further analysis of Barry's bank records lead police to suspect that Barry is hiding an illicit source of income.
We need to find out where he's stealing money from. So, start another side investigation into his financial dealings at work.
Investigators interview Barry's superior at the National Guard Armory.
The commander was telling me that Barry really doesn't have any way to steal money, but they're allowed to rent out the armory for weddings and stuff like that. The commander said, but he hasn't rented this thing out in quite a while.
Investigators find that Barry had been renting out the armory without notifying his superiors.
Barry was using his position to rent the armory out, and then he was holding the money on his own, and that actually amounted up to a pretty substantial amount.
Barry had worked for the National Guard Armory for at least 20 years. When they realized that he was stealing money from them, they were in shock. They couldn't believe it.
Barry agrees to talk to police about the alleged embezzlement.
We went to interview him in regards to the theft. He confessed right away about the theft, gave us a full statement. We indicted him, and he ended up working out a plea bargain agreement, and he was sentenced to 6 months in jail.
With Barry temporarily behind bars, investigators shift their focus to one crucial question. Could his greed and financial desperation have had something to do with Charlotte's murder?
Just because you're a thief doesn't make you a murderer, but because you need money real bad, that is motive for you to kill somebody. Barry's got a money issue, and that's a flag.
Police discover a pattern of behavior that began years prior, during his marriage to Charlotte.
At the time of the murder, they were behind on several payments, car payments, telephone. They were behind in their utility bills. Although we don't know where the money's going, couldn't determine if Barry had a girlfriend or anything, couldn't find any gambling problems, no drug issues.
Police finally uncover the nature of Barry's voracious spending.
We learned that Barry had a problem playing the stock market, and he had lost a bunch of money. He would do it without Charlotte knowing it, because it was totally against her wishes.
Investigators develop a theory of the murder that revolves around Charlotte's disputed inheritance.
Charlotte's cousin, Wayne Rice, he was contesting the will, so we thought she wanted it settled. And Barry did not want to settle. He was trying to talk her into holding out. Don't give Wayne Rice any money. And she was supposed to have a meeting with an attorney on the day that she was murdered.
Did an argument erupt over the inheritance, leading Barry to murder his wife?
I never would have expected Barry to be the suspect in Charlotte's death. Now, later, doubts began to cloud my mind.
Money had to be a factor in this murder case. I never felt like he went home to kill her that day. I think it was a fight, and I felt that if I could ever get him to talk to me again, I could get a confession from him.
Police ask Barry for another interview. He agrees.
I told him Our goal was to continue to work on his wife's murder case, but we needed to talk to him some more. He asked me, can I call my wife? And the state investigator told him the only person you can call is your attorney. Well, that pissed him off. So he said, fine, let me talk to my attorney. So it ruined any chance we had to confession.
Once again, the investigation goes cold.
There was some angst in the community. We don't want an unsolved murder. We want closure to this case. And I don't think it was ever a case where the police didn't want to bring this to trial. I think it just took time to put a puzzle together.
Police are stunned when nearly 5 years after Charlotte's murder, a pair of unexpected witnesses come forward.
Barry's daughters, they went to the DA's office to their crime victims advocate.
After refusing to speak with police for years, Heather and Kara provide investigators with explosive new information.
And then finally, after so many years, they were ready to offer what they could to find justice for their mother.
The daughters of murder victim Charlotte Waits are finally ready to talk to police after years of silence.
That was a big turning point for us because prior to the time, the girls wouldn't talk to us because the investigation was pointing to their father.
As time went on, Heather and Kara begin to have doubts about Barry's innocence.
When Heather and Kara came forward, they began to tell investigators about their dad stealing money from them.
The women provide a detailed account of how their father had left them penniless.
Because of Barry being a suspect in his wife's murder, the insurance company would never pay her death benefit. At some point, he was able to convince the insurance company to leave the money to the daughters.
At that point, Barry made his daughters an offer for Charlotte's inherited property.
He said, if you'll give me that insurance money, I will give you the land. So they give their dad the money. But when the land dispute settled, he signed over the property to his new wife and left his daughters out to dry.
As police dig deeper, they learn how Barry had manipulated his daughters into silence.
The youngest girl had been being told by her father, you're the main suspect in this case. You can't talk to the police because everybody in this town believes that you killed your mother.
Detectives also find out that Barry tried to throw police off his trail by providing false tips.
He's been submitting Kara's name, submitting the boyfriend's name, throwing red herrings at us. You're making us chase down rabbit holes.
Now they've learned what kind of person their dad is, and they said they finally realized that their dad killed their mother.
With the women offering to testify against their father, the district attorney reviews the evidence and decides to prosecute the case.
The day that we were able to have that warrant served, it was a good day.
Barry is charged with the first-degree murder of his wife of over 2 decades, Charlotte Waits. But the case is not a slam dunk.
You can convict on circumstantial evidence, but when you do that, you have to rule out every other plausible explanation.
The trial begins in November of 2006. Prosecutors begin by describing how and why Barry killed his wife. They assert that Barry left work around 11:30 a.m. to confront Charlotte at home about her disputed inheritance.
So Barry left Armory, went straight home to talk her out of making that settlement offer.
And Barry comes home, and they start arguing. And she says, this is my family, and I'm going to do it, and this is my decision.
Then, Barry turned violent.
And at that point, he gets her. It caused her nose to bleed, and she wipes up with towels, and that was enough. She's just getting out of there and getting away from Barry.
But Barry doesn't let Charlotte escape.
He reaches and grabs her shirt and pulls her shirt back and starts choking her. And he pulls it so tight that he absolutely strangles the life out of Miss Waits. And then he takes her and just kicks her down the steps. He goes down and leans over the body to make sure that she's dead.
Prosecutors say Barry attempted to cover up his crime. He hastily hides the bloody towels and dumps Charlotte's purse.
And then he leaves and he starts putting his alibi together. He then goes back to the armory and he sends a fax, and that fax is supposed to be putting him out of the time frame of being at the house the time she's killed.
The prosecution shows that Barry had sufficient time to commit the murder.
There was an hour-and-a-half time frame from when Mr. Waits had left the armory and back to the armory when he sends a fax.
And prosecutors prove that every other suspect had an airtight alibi.
Every other name, every other person that was mentioned, we can eliminate them. But we could not eliminate Barry.
Later, an expert rules out the possibility of an unknown intruder based on further analysis of the unidentified prints at the scene.
The fingerprint expert says these are little kids' fingerprints. They don't have anything to do with this crime. But Barry Waits' fingerprints were down low, close to Charlotte Waits' body.
Finally, Barry's daughters take the stand.
You could read it on their faces and you could hear it in their voices. They were 100% convinced that their dad killed their mother.
After a brief deliberation, the jury reaches a verdict.
When the jury came back guilty, it wasn't relief. It was just a feeling of calm.
I went to her grave that afternoon and I said, okay, sweet girl, you can rest in peace because we know that your killer is going to pay for what he did.
Barry Waits, the former mayor of Lynette, is sentenced to 40 years in prison.
I think at one time, Barry was a person that intended to take care of his family. But whatever demons he had that made him burn up his family's money, his mother's money, consumed him, overtook him, and the need for money was more important than his wife's life or his daughter's love.
Mr. Holtzclaw, you and your attorneys just come forward.
The whole country watching.
And Holtzclaw being able to keep the pressure on.
A college football standout, a bodybuilder, a tough guy cop begging for his life.
I feel like it's all a movie, and we're just going to wake up and it's going to be over.
His girlfriend standing by him.
Did you ever have doubt in your mind, like maybe I'd missed something?
His parents going through their savings to save him.
What's it like watching your son be portrayed as a monster, a predator?
It's very hard. And he's not the villain that they portrayed him as.
But a dogged detective, his very own colleague, who interrogates him.
Nothing sexual on.
Nothing sexual.
Gathering physical evidence in that tiny room to convict him. Tonight on 2020, we're taking you inside the case that made national headlines.
Coming to us from Oklahoma,
a former police officer,
Daniel Holtzclaw.
Women terrorized during late-night traffic stops.
She begged him, please don't do this. Are you going to kill me?
Attacks nobody would report.
This is the face of courage.
Except one fearless grandmother.
He just picked the wrong lady to stop that night.
13 accusers in all coming out of the shadows. But will a jury buy what they're saying?
How difficult is it to mount a case where you have witnesses showing up high on PCP?
The verdict is coming down.
Here's what's going on right now. About 100 people cramming, elbowing, and pushing their way into the courtroom.
He never spoke in court, but he's talking now to 2020. What the dash cam never saw. Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas. David is away tonight. How many of you have ever felt the dread of being pulled over by a policeman while driving? Maybe you're going too fast, a taillight is out. It could be anything. But now a group of women are taking legal action, saying they had a very different reason for being afraid. Someone wearing a badge, someone sworn to protect them, and doing anything but. Here's Juju Chang.
Now, what's your first name? Daniel. Daniel. Daniel, just have to sit in here.
Okay.
And you can have sit there.
You've seen the good cop, bad cop routine, but never one quite like this. In a tiny, overheated interrogation room in Oklahoma City, the good cop, Detective Kim Davis, 28 years on the job, is very good.
This is gonna make the rumors go away.
And the bad cop, Patrolman Daniel Holdsclaw, is allegedly very bad indeed. He's not here to solve a crime, he's the suspect.
You have the right to remain silent. You understand that? Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Oklahoma City has a hardcore cowboy culture and a state capital with its own oil wells. But at night, beyond the blur of traffic and the neon rainbow glow of the Skydance Bridge, there is a dangerous side of the little city on the prairie, the Northeast. Police Chief Bill City knows it well.
There's a lot of gang activity. It's a lower income area, and there has been in the past a lot of crime in that area.
I'm willing to make a statement and answer questions at this time. I do not want an attorney present at this time.
Officer Holdsclaw is accused of sexually assaulting a woman he pulled over on the night shift just hours earlier. It's a stunning tumble for a hulking former football hero.
Holdsclaw in on the tackle.
His loving family says he's always been a gentle giant. His dad, Eric, and mom, Kumiko, and sister Jenny have many mementos of his gridiron glory.
This is Eastern Michigan.
Holdsclaw, nicknamed the Claw by teammates, was a football star in high school and an All-American at Eastern Michigan University.
What a story Holdsclaw is. Young man out of Enid, Oklahoma.
He excelled in football. He became an all-state player at Enid High. He was recruited to a Division I school.
And he wanted to go play in the NFL.
He wanted to be a pro football player, and that was his dream.
The 2009.
The lifelong dream dashed the night of the NFL draft.
The Kansas City Chiefs select Tyson Jackson.
He just didn't make the cut. It's really competitive.
It's the disappointment of a lifetime. Holdsclaw turns from pro football dreams to his second career choice, police work.
Here we go. Come on.
He continues to stack muscles on his linebacker physique. Endless hours in the gym pumping iron.
Squeeze.
That's where he meets his girlfriend, who asked us not to use her name. They bond over barbells and bodybuilding.
My best words to describe him is a big teddy bear. I mean, he's really sweet, he's really kind.
Mwah. Good night, baby.
And religious, too. She says they attended church every week. Daniel would send her Bible verse selfies.
Romans 12, verse 10. Love one another with brotherly affection as members of one family.
Holdsclaw even had a verse tattooed on his arm.
I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me.
They'd only been together 6 months, but were already thinking about forever.
Do you think this was leading to marriage?
Definitely.
Holdsclaw is little more than a rookie, just 3 years on the job, but already getting a reputation as an aggressive officer, a pair of brass knuckles in his patrol car. A local newspaper says he enjoys chasing down the bad guys as much as opposing running backs on the football field. His dad, Eric Holdsclaw, is a police officer too, in the family's hometown of Enid, Oklahoma.
I would say he was a proactive police officer. He liked to get in the mix. He wanted to catch the bad guys. He was very proud of that. He wanted to make a difference.
Yeah, I've never been in trouble like this before. Never got accused of anything like this.
But Holdsclaw is a cop in a tight spot.
And we told you that there was a traffic stop,
Right.
that somebody made some allegations against an officer.
Right.
It's 2 o'clock that morning, off duty, driving home in his police car, which many officers do in Oklahoma City. Holdsclaw makes a traffic stop.
Do you make traffic stops normally after work?
I don't, but in that case, I saw her swerve and whatnot.
Holdsclaw describes a routine stop. No ticket, just a warning about her expired driver's license.
I'm like, okay, I'm just off work, I'm tired. Get your license taken care of. I cut her loose after that.
Then where'd you go?
I went straight home.
He admits he never bothered to call it in, and in another violation of procedure, had shut down the communications and GPS tracking system in his patrol car, something he says he always did after work.
Did you run her on your MDT?
No, I didn't. All my stuff as far as that, because I didn't even call it in and say it was a traffic stop, my computer was off and everything as well.
But that female driver is telling police a very different story. She says the officer made her expose herself and sexually assaulted her right there in the back of his patrol car by the side of the road.
Well, was there anything accidental touch, anything.
If she thought it when I pass searched her, but it was nothing as far as I felt like I would do anything as far as sexual or anything like that.
Detective Davis had met with the woman earlier that morning.
What was your first impression of her?
Her makeup was smeared because she'd been crying. I mean, I can see her face right now and the fear in her eyes and in her facial expression.
Nothing sexual went on during that 15 minutes.
Nothing sexual.
Holtzclaw's sister says all she sees is a man telling the truth.
When you look at the interrogation video, what do you see?
That's Daniel. Daniel being honest, straightforward. He had nothing to hide.
Detective Davis disagrees.
I just thought he was very robotic.
He didn't express any shock.
No. If I accused you of doing something like this, or if I was accused of something like that, my voice would probably go up 10 octaves, and I'd be like, what? I didn't do that.
Did your pants come unzipped, unbuttoned, anything while you were standing right there?
No.
But after more than 2 hours cornered in that stifling interrogation room,
I don't know if this shirt's gonna be big enough for you. There you go, boy.
he's stripped of his badge, his gun, and humiliatingly, even his uniform. Standing there in borrowed clothes in that tiny room, Holtzclaw calls his girlfriend.
Hey, baby. Bev, I need to tell you what's going on. It's crazy.
You've just witnessed the end of Daniel Holtzclaw's short career in law enforcement.
Hey, until this investigation gets all completed, what's going on, we're going to put you on administrative leave of pay, okay?
Sure.
Not only is he no longer working for the police, now the police are working against him. When we come back, we'll meet the woman from that nightmare traffic stop.
He just picked the wrong lady to stop that night.
And later, the invisible evidence found on Holtzclaw's uniform, the pivotal clue detectives find on those confiscated pants.
Was that a smoking gun in a sense?
Stay with us.
"2020 Saturday continues with what the dash cam never saw.
In the heart of Tornado Alley in 2014, Oklahoma has an easy year, less than 20 twisters. But in Oklahoma City, the police department is getting slammed with a man-made disaster.
Oklahoma City police confirmed they are investigating this claim.
The force rocked by allegations against one of its own. Officer Daniel Holtzclaw is preying on those he's sworn to serve and protect. But now he's the one being pursued by sex crimes detective Kim Davis, and it is personal.
For someone to use the badge and the gun to just do the most demeaning thing to a human being, it's infuriating. It was my main focus. I was going to put him in prison.
The alleged victim, Oklahoma City native Janie Liggins. She runs a daycare center, is 57 years old, a mother of 4, and a grandmother of 12.
I looked in my rearview mirror and I noticed the lights and I know it was a police car.
She recalls the night she was pulled over along a section of 50th Street. The officer told her she was driving erratically.
And when I opened the door, he came to my car. He said, "I stopped you because I saw you was swerving."
He starts to question her about a cup of Kool-Aid seen in this police photo and whether she's been drinking. She says she had not. But when the cops start searching her, Liggins says the traffic stop gets weird and scary. She says he orders her to expose herself.
I'm like, "What? You want me to take my pants down?" Then he was like, "Yes." I said, "Oh, no, sir." I said, "You're not supposed to do that, sir."
Liggins says Holtzclaw then forced her to commit a sex act on him as he stood by the open rear door of his police car.
She was scared to death she was going to die. She didn't look at his face. She didn't look at his name tag. She said all she could stare at was his gun.
In his police interview, Holtzclaw acknowledges Liggins was afraid of him.
Did she ever ask you if you were going to shoot her?
She did. She was talking about a pistol all the time and talking about guns and whatnot. And I'm like, calm down. I'm not going to shoot you or anything like that.
Did she think you were going to shoot her?
Maybe.
It's disgusting. And this is my mother, who is a grandmother.
Liggins' daughter, Latoya Rifa, sat by her mother's side during our interview.
And he assumed that he could do this because there's no way she's going to report him. There's no way nobody's going to believe her.
And did he say anything?
He just backed up and he zipped his pants up. And he moved back and I just got out his police car. and walked towards my car thinking he was going to shoot me in the back. And he let me live to tell the story. Big mistake.
2 hours later, encouraged by her family, Liggins reports the assault to the police.
If I could have went and found him myself, I would have gladly done so.
Do you want to take a moment? You okay?
No, I'm fine.
Did you believe her?
Yes, I did. There was no motive for her to make this up.
Detectives scour Holtzclaw's car for evidence, but find nothing more than fast food wrappers, muscle supplements, and a Justin Timberlake CD. But when they examine Holtzclaw's uniform, hoping to find Janie Liggins' DNA, they get a shock. They find DNA all right, but it's not hers, and it's not from Holtzclaw's girlfriend either.
There was unknown DNA, female DNA on the inside of his pants.
Detectives now deduce two things. The unknown DNA may be another victim, and Holtzclaw, a serial predator. The hunt begins for a match to the mystery DNA.
We weren't going to stop till we found it. Juries today want DNA because everybody watches CSI.
Everybody wants the DNA moment.
Right.
They begin checking the records of Holtzclaw's encounters with other women on his beat.
I think we hand-searched 6 paper boxes full of those, trying to find everybody he ran.
So that's like thousands of names is my assumption.
Oh, thousands. We just made a list of black females that he stopped and ran and started going door to door.
Behind those closed doors, and as the investigation widens, just what they feared. They find more women who say they too were attacked by a cop. And when the story leaks,
an officer has been placed on administrative leave.
Still more women come forward. Take the case of 22-year-old Shardarian Hill, who was handcuffed to this hospital bed, high on drugs after an arrest, when she says she was sexually assaulted.
I didn't know what to think. I was scared because I was just like, this is a police officer. I didn't know what to do, and then I'm handcuffed to the bed, so I'm just like...
You're powerless.
Yes, I'm in his custody. I don't know what he might do next, so I just didn't even say nothing.
And then there's Carla Raines, a 45-year-old mother of 2, who says she was forced to expose herself by an officer, supposedly checking for drugs or weapons.
So it got to the point to where I raised up my shirt. Okay, can I go now? Can you let me go?
Why didn't you report it?
I didn't think that anything would happen.
And then the police tracked down this woman, 39-year-old Sherry Ellis. She tells a now familiar story. She was walking down Highland Drive when she was stopped by a cop in a squad car.
And that's when he started doing things that he shouldn't be doing.
What kind of things did he do?
When he searched me, he searched under my clothes. He patted me down up under my clothes.
Ellis says the officer ran her name and found she had an arrest warrant and multiple unpaid fines.
He's like, well, okay, what do you think we need to do about this, Miss Ellis? And I said, I don't know. Are you going to take me to jail? And I was looking down because I said in the back of my mind, oh, my God, I'm going to jail, you know. And when I looked up...
When she looked up, she says the officer forced himself on her. But her ordeal would not end there. Afterwards, she says he drove her to this abandoned schoolyard.
He drove me to, he drove me to a school, and let's side of the school in the back. And he opened the door, he told me to get out and pull my pants down.
And allegedly assaulted her again.
When it was over, he said I was free to go.
And now police are connecting all those cases, the women, African American, and mostly middle-aged, to that young, all-American, clean-cut cop, Daniel Holtzclaw, an officer allegedly leading a double life on the night shift. 2 months after his interrogation, he is arrested in the parking lot outside his gym.
The police officer arrested. Officer Daniel Holtzclaw is in custody tonight, with several women coming forward claiming to be his victims.
They have Holtzclaw. They also have a growing list of accusers. But there's a problem. Not one of the women is a match to that critical clue, the mystery female DNA found on the uniform.
We kept going and kept searching because we had to find a match.
When we come back, something else that's not adding up. Is it possible police are chasing the wrong man?
Your description doesn't match Daniel Holtzclaw.
Stay with us.
2020 Saturday continues with what the dash cam never saw.
Why in the world would she make this up?
I don't know. She was cooperative. She was nervous.
You know what? If this is a bunch of false allegations, then I want it cleared up too.
From that claustrophobic interrogation room where Officer Daniel Holdsclaw insisted on his innocence to the urban Oklahoma City neighborhood called the Northeast, Detective Kim Davis and her colleagues were working furiously to investigate a ballooning number of sexual assault allegations against the policeman. 3, 6, 12, and finally 13 women.
What was the pattern of behavior when he would stop a woman, a potential victim?
He would check their background first, and if it was convictions, drug use, prostitution, then he would target them. He would say, well, I need to search you. I need to make sure you don't have, and it would kind of start from there.
As Holdsclaw begins preparing a defense, his family hires private investigator Brian Bates.
I can confidently say Daniel did not do the things that he was charged with.
Bates is well known in Oklahoma City as a video vigilante for posting videos of prostitutes and their customers caught in the act.
Hey, Debbie. What are you doing? Running off the prostitution going on.
He says because nearly all Holdsclaw's alleged victims have a history of drug abuse, prostitution, or outstanding warrants, they're not to be believed.
We're dealing with a lot of people that their entire life is spent committing crimes. It's just a simple fact. Lying is second nature to committing these crimes.
So I know that you have a criminal record.
Yeah, but I don't really want to talk about that.
You don't want to talk about it?
They are the perfect victim. Nobody's going to believe them. If you believe them, who cares? They're prostitutes. A prostitute can't be raped. Yes, they can. Yes, they can. So that's why he was picking these kind of women, because that's the perfect victim.
Perfect victims, but far from perfect witnesses. The Holdsclaw private eye, Brian Bates, plays me several police interviews he says prove the women are not credible. Remember Carla Raines, the woman who says she was forced to expose herself? In her police interview, at first, she repeatedly denies she's a victim at all.
Have you ever come to any contact where an officer has been inappropriate?
No.
You ever had to expose yourself to them?
No.
5 times she says she's not a victim.
Another alleged victim can't pick Holdsclaw out of a lineup.
That's him.
Okay.
I think.
Okay, well, I've got several photographs to show you, so.
I'm not really sure.
She couldn't identify Holdsclaw in a photo lineup.
Right. They don't look at their face.
Perhaps the most bewildering inconsistency, Holdsclaw is 6'2" with white and Japanese parents. But Sherry Ellis tells detectives the man who assaulted her in a schoolyard was a short, black man.
Tell me your description of him.
He's black.
He's black male.
Muscular.
Muscular. Is he taller than you or shorter than you?
Like right here, maybe. Like that.
So you think he's shorter than you?
Yeah.
You describe him as being like this to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're about 5'10"?
5'11".
5'11"?
Yeah.
Daniel Holdsclaw is like 6'2".
Oh, see? I still didn't know that.
I mean, that's kind of a big difference, right?
Yeah. Well, I really didn't pay any attention. I really didn't. I just knew it was being done to me.
Does this trouble you at all that the descriptions are so far off?
No. Can you imagine going through that trauma and then trying to remember how tall he was, how much he weighed, what did he look like when you're being sexually assaulted? You know, that's the last thing on your mind.
Among their many other problems, most of the 13 accusers never reported the sexual assaults.
Why do you think all the other women stayed silent?
Because of their lifestyle and their relationship with the police department.
But one woman did not stay silent. Remember Janie Liggins, daycare worker and grandmother? She went to police right away, within hours.
How did she describe the attacker?
She said that he was big, muscle bodybuilder big. She thought he had blonde hair. Once he started doing the things he was doing, she was afraid to look at his face and she was afraid to look at his name tag because she thought if he saw her doing that he would kill her.
She may have gotten the hair color wrong, but not the color of his car. She describes an all-black squad car, which turns out to be an important detail.
At that time, we were in the process of converting over to all black. Most of our cars were still black and white.
One of the few officers driving a solid black car at the time, Daniel Holdsclaw.
So in your mind, she was credible?
Yes.
But what about his credibility? When we come back, we'll hear what the former All-American athlete has to say for himself.
I want people to hear from me.
Our interview with the disgraced police officer Daniel Holdsclaw, next.
"2020 Saturday" continues with what the dashcam never saw.
If the allegations against former Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holdsclaw are true, he is a serial sex offender, a predator who used his power and position to prey on women.
And this is with his patrol car.
Yeah, he was very proud.
But that is not how the Holdsclaw family sees it.
There's just no way. There's not a fiber in my body that believes he did it.
In his boyhood home in Enid, Oklahoma, he's still the hero with his own personal Hall of Fame in a corner of the living room. His biggest fans, his parents and sister Jenny.
He's such a loving brother. He has such a big heart.
To them, he is forever the pistol-packing birthday boy, the perfect prom date, anything but the prime suspect in a series of notorious crimes that revolted the country.
Officer Holdsclaw, do you have anything to say?
What's it like watching your son be portrayed as a monster, a serial rapist, a predator?
It's very hard. He's just like you and me. He's just a man. And he's not the villain that they portrayed him as.
To fund their son's defense, the Holdsclaws say they have emptied bank accounts and asked for donations. Eric Holdsclaw has indefinitely delayed plans to retire.
Hello?
Please take call from an inmate at a correctional facility.
Hello?
On a scratchy phone line from behind bars, it's the accused calling, Daniel Holdsclaw.
Officer Daniel Holdsclaw
Sexually abusing several women while he was on duty.
The object of so much public scrutiny and scorn, about to speak publicly for the first time. Daniel Holdsclaw had told 2020 he wanted to talk on camera, but authorities will not allow it. They say for his own safety. A former cop behind bars is a target.
What made you want to talk to us?
I want people to hear from me. How do I respond to these questions? So they can see the truth. I have nothing to hide.
You say you're not guilty. You're telling me you never raped any of those women.
Absolutely.
Have you ever sexually assaulted any woman?
I have never sexually assaulted anyone.
Holdsclaw says not only did he not commit these crimes, there were no crimes. He insists the women, all 13 of them, are lying. He claims none of them were sexually assaulted by anyone.
Why would 13 women lie?
The detectives approach these women and say, we have a tip that you've been sexually assaulted by an Oklahoma City police officer. It's basically giving them a lottery ticket to say yes.
They went out and sought these people and planted the idea that, oh, we're investigating this officer that we think may have assaulted you.
Could it be that you reverse engineered the investigations and put the power of suggestion into some of these potential victims' heads?
You could do that. I mean, I guess, but I didn't.
In our interview, Holdsclaw freely admitted that he did have interactions with all of the women. But he wasn't committing crimes, he says. He was trying to solve them, develop sources, locate drug houses, and help some of the women straighten up.
Why were you putting these women in the back of your car? Because investigators say that's not only bad police work, but it's dangerous.
That's good police work. You run warrant searches, you can talk to them, you find intel based on what their stories are to see if they match up.
Police also point out that Holdsclaw violated protocol after one of those traffic stops. After Holdsclaw allegedly assaulted Shardarian Hill, he actually friended her on Facebook. These are some of his messages. Making sure you're doing okay and staying out of trouble, reads one message. And on at least 5 occasions, he asks her to call him.
We don't Facebook friend people we put in jail. That's just stupid.
And when his girlfriend found out about it later, even she wondered about that.
Did you think it was weird that he Facebook friended one of the women?
Yeah, I didn't understand that at first. When I asked him, why would you do that? And he said he was just trying to help her, and I was just trying to be a good guy and make sure she was okay.
But it's not just that you Facebook friended her. You went to her house in your personal car. Why would you do that?
Basically, just check up on her, make sure she's okay. I shouldn't have not done that. I was wrong, but I did not do anything to her. I did not come on to her.
That is not what Shardarian says.
And when he got there, he was trying to get me to have sex with him.
Police continue hunting for the most incriminating evidence of all, that elusive mystery victim, the DNA from Holtzclaw's uniform pants. Kim Davis and other detectives searched through records of every person Holtzclaw checked for outstanding warrants.
First name was Carla.
So it was gumshoe detective work?
Yeah, it was just hitting the streets, putting on our tennis shoes and going.
And then the tennis shoe detective work pays off. Detective Kim Davis locates a girl who may be the most important witness of all. A 17-year-old Holtzclaw had given a ride home just hours before pulling over Janie Liggins. The teenager tells police Holtzclaw assaulted her, too.
He started, searching me like this, and he put his hands up under my clothes and started fiddling on me.
Did he say anything then?
He was like, well, you know you have warrants, and I don't have to take you to jail today, so this is what you're going to have to do.
Davis then swabs the teen's mouth, collecting a DNA sample.
To compare to any DNA that we've got on his clothing.
They send it off to the lab, and bingo. It's a match, confirming that her skin cells were found inside the fly of Holtzclaw's pants. He says there's an innocent explanation. He may have picked up the girl's DNA searching her and then transferred it to his pants during a bathroom break. But the police are certain that DNA is going to put him away.
When you got that DNA match, what went through your head?
Well, I said I was going to do a backflip off my file cabinet, but I didn't. Oh, I was just ecstatic because that was the DNA moment.
When we come back, the high-stakes Holtzclaw case comes to court.
Everybody's got to leave the floor.
And Oklahoma City braces for a storm.
32 counts, no man!
Truth and justice.
It's important to note that the officer was a white officer.
Black and white.
And the only things black in the courtroom was the 13 black women in the judge's robe.
Watch what happens next.
2020 Saturday continues with what the dashcam never saw.
The trial begins in the serial sexual assault case against Oklahoma City police officer Daniel Holtzclaw.
Coming to us from Oklahoma.
But former police officer Daniel Holtzclaw.
Half the world is watching, and the other half, it would appear, trying to get a good seat in the courthouse.
Here's what's going on right now. About 100 people cramming, elbowing, and pushing their way into the courtroom.
Everybody's got to leave the floor. Go in the library.
The former officer facing 36 counts of sex crimes against 13 women, carrying a term of several life sentences.
We believe you! We believe you!
Outside the courthouse, protests.
32 counts, no man! 32 counts!
Sometimes so loud, juror Dan Speaks says everyone inside the courthouse could hear them.
At one point, the judge delayed the hearing and told us to basically ignore it.
We have a problem when it comes to African Americans and a police officer.
It's important to note that the officer was a white officer.
In the wake of the recent riots in Ferguson, Missouri, and the Black Lives Matter protests, the racial overtones in the case are only heightened when the jury is selected.
Consisting of 8 men, 4 women, all of them white.
They're all white.
You started to get concerned about, here we go again. Here we go again. You had an all-white jury, and the only things black in the courtroom was the 13 black women in the judge's robe.
Hello?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Holtzclaw tells me his theory on the phone, that the police department manufactured a case against him to satisfy the public outcry.
We want life! 36 counts! We want life!
Why do you think the police intentionally railroaded you?
If they didn't convict me, there would be the next Ferguson deal happening in Oklahoma City.
And so far, we have heard from 3 of the alleged victims, but there are still 10 more that we haven't heard from.
As expected, Holtzclaw's defense attorney, Scott Adams, attacks the credibility of the 13 accusers. Some of the women were in jail on other charges during the trial and testified in their orange jumpsuits. Some changed their stories. And then there was the one who came to court to testify high on drugs.
We know that she tested positive for PCP and other drugs.
He knew this. He patrolled those streets day in, day out.
He knew they might not stand up in a court of law.
He knew they would not stand up in a court of law, and that's what he was banking on.
How difficult is it to mount a case where you have witnesses showing up high on PCP, you have witnesses with a history of lying to the police? These are not easy witnesses to put on the stand.
No, it was horrible, and plus it gives the defense just a million things to attack.
But the first woman Detective Kim Davis interviewed, the grandmother, Janie Liggins, was not like the others. No long criminal history, no record of addiction or prostitution.
Let me ask you about Janie Liggins. She immediately reported the event after it occurred. Why would she make that up?
Let's get the factual facts out there. She's not innocent what you people think she is. She had a bust in the 80s, but we're going to present that to the jury.
Yeah, but how does a 30-year-old drug bust, how is that relevant to a rape case?
Credibility. It's her credibility. This is not a woman that's, a soccer mom or, someone that's credible in society.
Janie Liggins says she wasn't even charged in that arrest in the 80s, and she's never been in trouble since.
The thing is he's been stopping a lot of prostitutes and drug users, and I guess apparently he thought I was one of them. With big mistake. He just stopped the wrong lady that night.
He stopped the wrong lady that night.
Exactly.
Before the trial is even over, well-known civil rights attorney Benjamin Crump is already planning the next case.
I will be representing them in civil litigation for them to get whole justice.
Lawsuits on behalf of the alleged victims.
Even before the trial ended, they all lined up. They all were looking for the money trail on this.
Detectives were approaching these women saying, basically giving them a lottery ticket, and all you had to do was just say yes.
What do you mean by they handed him a lottery ticket?
White Oklahoma City jury deliberates very deliberately, day after day and deep into the night. 4 days, a courthouse record for the longest sequestered jury in county history.
After so long, we felt like we were brought together. Somebody, a higher power, brought us together for a purpose.
Juror Dan Speak says for all the talk of race and the threat of riots outside the jury room, it did not come up inside. He says at first, a number of them were ready to set Daniel Holtzclaw free. They just didn't believe some of those women.
There was some jurors that knew the fact that who these victims were, had a hard time believing them.
For the last 5 weeks, Daniel Holtzclaw has walked into this courtroom and his face has remained expressionless.
Finally, the jury returns. They have verdicts on all 36 counts. The judge silently scans each page of the jury form. Daniel Holtzclaw is visibly shaking in his boots, seemingly paralyzed with fear, despite claiming he anticipated a favorable outcome.
Were you convinced that they were going to find you not guilty?
Absolutely, 100%. All in my heart, within my family, within everyone that was on my side. They all said there's no way that you should be convicted.
And then the judge begins to read out Daniel Holtzclaw's fate.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition and punishment is set at 5 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy and punishment is set at 20 years.
And as the guilties pile up, physically pushing down on Daniel Holtzclaw, the powerful former football star, the aggressive rookie cop, collapsing before the eyes of the courtroom.
Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree and punishment is set at 30 years.
His family stunned.
His tearful reaction to the verdict made some people think, oh, well, those are tears of an innocent man.
No, those are tears of a man that got caught, and he's not remorseful. He's just sad that he got caught and he's being punished.
Defendant is not guilty of the crime of...
The news broke overnight
It was brutal, you know, and it was in an area where you don't expect these sorts of things to happen.
The principal injuries were to her head. There were signs of multiple blows from a heavy object.
This is a sustained, violent assault.
Such a quiet, beautiful village. The fact that there was a murderer on the loose was really scary for people.
4,500 occupants of local homes in the area were questioned. She was well known, well liked, well loved. Very difficult to imagine anyone would target her.
As far as picture-perfect villages go, Bosham in West Sussex is up there with the best of them.
Bosham is a really picturesque, beautiful village. A lot of people from London have their second houses down here, so there's a lot of money down here as well.
It's predominantly a sailing village. A lot of sailing goes on in Bosham. People come from quite a way locally to go sailing in Bosham.
As a quaint coastal town, Bosham attracts its fair share of visitors.
A lot busier in the summer. Loads and loads of people come around to visit the area. But in this area, in the heart of the village, if you like, it's a pretty close-knit community, and people look out for each other, and it's just, you know, it's just quite a typical sort of English village, I'd say.
The demographic is mainly of an elderly nature. There is the Chichester Harbour, which is an area of outstanding natural beauty, where a lot of the locals would go to sail, take lovely strolls and walks along the harbour. Especially in the summer months, it's more attractive for the tourists because of the lovely weather we get here in the south coast.
Crime is so low in Bosham, there are often months with nothing reported.
I remember being told by the police there hadn't been a crime recorded in Bosham for 6 months. So not a robbery, nothing, not a car broken into.
But in a village where everyone knows everyone, when the unthinkable happens, it tears a community apart.
Police are investigating after the body of a woman was found dead in a multi-million-pound property in a Hampshire village. The death is currently being treated as suspicious.
The news broke overnight that a woman was found in a home in Bosham.
The first that I knew that something had happened, there were multiple police cars and ambulances, which in Bosham it's unusual even to see one police car from week to week around the village, so that we obviously knew that something had happened, something had gone on.
At 10 a.m, 5 days after Christmas, Sussex police receive a 999 call to a large rural property in the village.
Police emergency, how can I help you?
The distraught caller reveals there's a woman dead in bed.
Obviously, the paramedics and police were called and they responded. They found the female in bed with clearly significant head injuries where she'd been struck numerous times with a blunt instrument.
The details from the police came in that the lady who had been found had been bludgeoned to death with an object. Her face was smashed in.
And it was clear at that point that this was a murder investigation.
It is quickly established the deceased woman is not the owner of the sumptuous property, as they are away for Christmas. So who is the woman? And who would want her dead?
There was a little bit of panic in the village because this sort of thing doesn't happen in Bosham.
It's such a quiet, beautiful village that the fact that there was a murderer on the loose was really scary for people.
Suddenly there was all this activity going on, lots and lots of police cars and everything. And of course, within no time, everybody knew there had been a murder. And there was a lot of gossiping and guesswork and so on.
As a journalist for the local newspaper at the time, Kelly Wickham was more used to reporting on village fates, but now found herself at the centre of a murder investigation.
Rumours started emerging about who could possibly have committed such a crime in this area. There were many speculations that came about, such as, why was the victim there? She didn't own the property. Where was the property owner?
A woman murdered while house-sitting a property in a seaside village has been named as Valerie Graves. Sussex police said that a post-mortem examination had not yet been carried out, but the woman is believed to have died of head injuries.
She just turned 55 on Christmas Day 2013, 4 days before her death. She originally was from London, had moved to Scotland to set up her home and a business up there, but returned down south to look after her elderly mother Eileen and spend more time with her family. She had 2 children, 2 grandchildren.
She had lived in Scotland for about 10 years and she was a local artist up there.
Police soon established that Valerie was looking after the house over the festive period with her mum, her sister and her sister's partner.
Things I would be considering en route to that particular crime scene would be who did find Valerie and under what circumstances? Who was the last person to see Valerie alive? Was there any sign of any struggle, any sign of any forced entry? If there's no sign of forced entry, then you may start thinking, well, was the premises insecure or is this something that's occurred inside the family home? So was there a dispute that had taken place? So until you've kind of spoken to the family, you can't rule them out, but you can't rule them in as well.
With the identity of their victim now known, police need to establish who would want her dead. Investigators immediately look at the hours leading up to the discovery of her body.
The night of the 29th of December was rather like any other. Normal watching of television. In fact, it was 10 p.m. that Mrs. Graves took her iPad and a book to bed. She was the first to go to bed. She was staying on the ground floor at the back of the house.
We understand in the morning her sister woke up with her partner. Her partner decided to go down to the farm shop to get some breakfast goods. Noticed that the bedroom door was slightly ajar, didn't think anything of it. He went out to the shops. Her sister then went in to check on Valerie and sadly found her clearly deceased in bed.
There were many rumours circulating about why did nobody hear her scream? Was this an inside job? Was there somebody in the house perhaps that knew what had happened? It was a really strange time because a lot of fingers were being pointed in a lot of directions.
Certainly at the beginning you have to keep a very open mind in relation to what may have happened, and unfortunately that involves including, were family members involved in this. And so you have to sort of hold them at arm's length to a certain extent, ask them a number of questions in relation to their movements.
Intense questioning of Valerie's family begins.
I do remember conversations about the fact that the family hadn't heard anything upstairs and she was downstairs, and a lot of people were like, well, how did they not hear anything? Was it something to do with the family? Was there more to it than that? It was, yeah, I mean, obviously people were speculating.
Initial reports into her death reveal a brutal attack.
The injuries to Mrs. Graves were akin to a high-speed, head-on collision.
So how could no one in the house have heard anything?
You have that gut feeling, you sense when you're speaking to people, looking at them in the eye, as to whether or not you think they are involved. And obviously, it would be a very traumatic scene for the family there, and very unlikely that you're going to get crocodile tears under those circumstances. And again, you want to know what sort of relationship the family have with Valerie and why would they want to do that. So I think, whilst you can't rule them out straight away, you get a quick sense of whether or not they're involved.
Speculation and theories about the motive escalate. But as the family is ruled out, suspicion falls on the local villagers.
There was always a slight fear in the back of your mind that it could be someone that you knew in the village and that they might still be on the loose.
The feeling everywhere seemed to be that of panic, worry, apprehension. Nobody could quite believe that somebody could be murdered, especially while sleeping in their own bed over the Christmas period. People just felt unsafe, really. Would this person attack again? Who was next?
In the pretty coastal village of Bosham, news is spreading that artist Valerie Graves has been brutally murdered while house-sitting over Christmas.
I work for some elderly clients that live in Bosham Home, and they were absolutely petrified because they're both in their 80s. The realisation that there's obviously a murderer out there, that the lady had been murdered in her sleep and they didn't know why.
When the details did come out, and you realise the sort of the gravity and the viciousness of the attack, it was quite worrying at the time. For a few months, everyone was sort of watching themselves and or looking over their shoulders a little bit, thinking, could it be him? Could it be her?
With a murder investigation underway, police need to consider who would want to harm Valerie. Due to tides and flooding in the village at that time of year, police believe it's unlikely to have been an opportunist burglar. Meaning one thing, the killer has to be local.
The weather was particularly miserable, lots of local floods going on, and it's not the sort of area that passing traffic would go through. You have to sort of go out of your way to get into Bosham. And so I would imagine over that period it was almost a kind of a lockdown in that area where the locals would just stay there and no one would come to visit unless it was to visit family and friends.
The area was pretty flooded. Not many visitors would have come to the area at this time of the year. It's Christmas. People would be spending time with their families together. And there was no real need for visitors, so the speculation was it must have been somebody local.
With the community the centre of a major investigation, everyone is a suspect.
The police came knocking on everybody's doors, and literally everybody. I mean, they came with the two, and they would interview each member of the family separately.
Police have several avenues in which to explore.
You'd also want to know who else has access to that address. So we know that the occupiers are away on holiday. A few phone calls could easily establish where they are and whether they had opportunity to get back to the address. But you're also thinking, well, who would do this and why would they do this? You know, Valerie was 55 years of age, she was in bed, she posed no threat to anyone, and so why would somebody do this? And you then start thinking about who lives in the area that could possibly have the motive to do this.
Having ruled out Valerie's family and the owners of the house, who were abroad, Valerie's body is taken for a post-mortem examination. Could this lead provide clues as to the cause of death and the sort of person who would commit such an atrocious crime?
The thing that all post-mortems are looking for is a medical cause of death. Physically, why is this person dead? But the forensic post-mortem also looks at, in more detail, the injuries present, patterns of injury, what the likely implement that may have caused them was, when they may have occurred, and really trying to get a much more clear narrative of the events surrounding this person's death. The expertise is in what sort of weapon was it, how much force was used, have they defended themselves.
The principal injuries were to her head. I'm looking at the pathology report now. There was extreme complexity to the wounds, signs of multiple blows from a heavy object, impossible for the pathologist to determine just how many blows.
It's a physical effort to strike someone multiple times with sufficient force to damage them. It is not an easy task, and it is not something to be achieved in a second or two. This is a sustained, violent assault.
The injuries that not only cause laceration of the skin, but also complete disruption of the central facial skeleton of the jaw, together with depressed fractures of the skull, with extending fractures to the base of the skull. And there was a patterned injury to the left side of the forehead, showing a semicircle, which, in the pathologist's opinion, would be consistent with the application of force from the round end of a hammer.
If somebody has died as a result of multiple blows with a hammer to the head, it will be clear from the size and shape of the injuries that that is what occurred. The normal head of the hammer is going to leave round to oval lacerations and abrasions when it strikes the body.
Having discovered Valerie was battered to death with a hammer, tragically the post-mortem reveals how she tried to fight off her attacker.
There was a level of defensive injuries sustained to Mrs. Graves. Her left hand that she must have raised above her head to shield her head from the blows revealed extensive bruising to the back of her hand, together with fractures of 2 of the bones of that hand.
Police still cannot believe no one in the house heard the attack, but now they have a new focus. Could the hammer reveal clues as to the perpetrator? And does the killer still have it?
You then have a cursory search around the premises to make sure that the weapon hasn't been left by the offender, because that could yield some forensic opportunities. And then you work your way into the grounds of the premises and bring in sufficient officers to conduct that search, which will include lifting up drains, looking in people's bins, going through people's gardens, and then just increasing out from the crime scene itself in case the offender has taken the weapon with them and then discarded it en route back to wherever they come from.
With the pressure on to find a hammer-wielding killer, local tradespeople are under the spotlight.
When I got interviewed by the police, it's because I was working for my elderly clients, so they'd obviously lived in the area, and I worked for them, so they were interviewing everybody that was in the local vicinity. So, you know, they wanted to know exactly what make of hammer that I had in the van, and yeah, it was quite worrying.
And it isn't long before their hunch pays off, and police make an announcement.
A man has been arrested on suspicion of the murder of an artist who was found dead at a property she was house-sitting over the Christmas period.
He lived very close to the scene of the crime, together with the fact that his occupation was manual, he was a labourer, may well have led the police to arrest him.
With a man being questioned, police continue to build their case and look for evidence.
They'll also be doing other forensic examinations within the crime scene, so there will be a number of fingerprints, for example, that may turn up within the house that are alien to that address. But it could be a window cleaner, it could be somebody who's done work in that address previously. And so these inquiries need to be bottomed out. And sometimes if you get a fingerprint of an individual together with an account that cannot be corroborated and they're not alibied, then that will give sufficient grounds for the police to arrest the individual and put further questions to them under caution.
The arrested man is interviewed extensively by police.
Despite the fact he spent some time in police custody, he was fully exonerated.
Police are back to square one. But then a discovery is made.
A weapon was found about 600 metres away from the home. It was that of a red claw hammer.
The finding of the hammer was absolutely crucial. It had the blood of Mrs. Graves on it, and therefore was the murder weapon.
And the hammer itself had been exposed to the elements for a couple of days, which means the opportunity to yield forensic evidence is reducing daily. But that said, the scientists were able to yield a DNA profile confirming Valerie's DNA. And then what the scientists also found was a very small partial DNA, and all they could say was that it related to a male individual.
Police now believe for certain Valerie's killer was male. Who is he? And why would he want Valerie dead? Investigations ramp up a notch, and the search for the owner of the hammer begins.
The hammer was a 16-ounce forged steel claw hammer, the sort of hammer you'd find from any DIY store. But to show the depth of the police investigation, they contacted Screwfix, who are the company who manufactured this hammer, and then trawled through the records of those suppliers who had sold this type of hammer, and then tried to eliminate purchasers from their inquiries.
The risks around having a partial profile is obviously you don't know who it belongs to, and actually it could be an innocent profile. So it could have been, you know, the shopkeeper that sold that hammer. It could be their profile. It could be somebody who's borrowed that hammer. So it may not necessarily link to the murderer, but at least it gives you an idea as to who you want to speak to that may have had contact with that hammer, and then that can then lead on to further inquiries.
With a partial DNA profile on the hammer, every male in the surrounding area is suddenly the focus of police attention.
The next step then is to start looking at males within the area, matching a certain criteria, who they're then going to ask to come forward and voluntarily give their DNA. It's a very expensive and time-consuming process.
Everybody was asked to come and volunteer, including people such as the postman, people that live nearby, anybody in the area.
They set up a mass DNA screening process where they asked local men from the age of 17 and upwards to come to a location, bring their ID with them, give them a thumbprint, and then offer a DNA sample that can then be checked against the partial male DNA profile that the police already had, so that they could either be ruled in or ruled out of that investigation.
So the response locally was outstanding because there was a joint desire in this small village town of Bosom that they wanted a culprit caught. Not just, of course, for Mrs. Graves and her friends and family, but because they had, on the face of it, a very dangerous man out loose.
There was DNA testing stations set up around the village. Myself and a few friends, and there's loads of us, all went to, you know, everyone that I know of went and got tested. I don't think anyone refused or didn't go. I think it was the sort of thing that actually, do you know what, if you haven't got anything to hide, then you've got no problem going and doing a DNA test.
Months of DNA screening takes place in Bosom and the surrounding villages.
So the police will do all they can to try and detect this crime. You know, they need to do this for the family, but also to reassure the community that there isn't somebody dangerous still out and about. So that they'll be undertaking all sorts of inquiries. The forensic searches alone will take, you know, many weeks, if not months. And then with those samples will take many more months to then try and establish whether any DNA can be taken from those samples.
But as time ticks away, the hunt for Valerie's killer goes cold.
The police were at a loss. There were no new leads, nobody had come forward with any more information.
5 years after her murder, Valerie's family, the police, and the villagers of Bosom are left fearing her killer will never be found.
So they were mystified, absolutely mystified. Who could have wanted this lady harm?
It's 5 years since the murder of Valerie Graves in the quaint coastal resort of Bosom in West Sussex, and police are no nearer to a suspect or a motive.
At first, we thought there might be a quick outcome to solving the crime, because it's quite a heinous crime, but there was nothing at all for weeks, and then months, and then ultimately years.
Having found a partial DNA profile of a male on a hammer, believed to be the murder weapon, police have spread their net around the surrounding villages in the hunt for a suspect.
It led to thousands of hours of police work. 4,500 occupants of local homes in the area were questioned. 600 statements taken. 3,059 males were eliminated by large-scale DNA screening.
In December 2018, I had a statement from the police renewing their appeal to find Valerie's murderer 5 years on. It was a really good statement. They were offering a substantial reward for any information at all. So for me, this was my front page story for that week. It was Christmas, it was a quiet news week anyway, and this was a real heartfelt story that I felt people needed to read about, even at this time. It might just jog someone's memory, it might just nudge them to remembering something that perhaps they felt was insignificant, but that would help police lead to an arrest at last and help the family put this to bed at last.
The police can't solve this on their own. They do need the assistance of the community, and quite often they will use the media to support them with that. Sadly, at times we have to offer a financial incentive for people to come forward, so it's not unusual for a reward to be put up for information that would lead to the arrest and prosecution of the offender. But you hope in cases like this that really do trouble the community that, you know, somebody, if they had information, they would come forward and they wouldn't be motivated by money.
With no clues as to who killed Valerie, police take a step back and re-examine the moments leading to her death. The attack had been so ferocious, so how had no one in the house heard a thing?
So this was a large house. Her sister and her mother and her sister's partner were sleeping in bedrooms upstairs. Valerie was sleeping downstairs in a ground floor bedroom where there were patio doors that then led on to the back garden. At that point, we know that somebody then entered those patio doors and then, sadly, brutally murdered her with a blunt instrument.
Police dig a little deeper into their victim.
The profile of Valerie Graves did surprise us all as a victim. She was just an ordinary person, for as far as we know, had no reason to be murdered in such a way or at all.
Valerie had spent a few days looking after the sumptuous property off Smugglers Lane with her sister, sister's partner, and her mum. And December 29th, 2013 was a quiet night in.
We know that Valerie and her family were in the house. They pretty much stayed in that evening to watch TV, as most families do. I think they were probably getting tired of the Christmas period. You know, Christmas had followed, birthday celebration had taken place, and it was a normal evening. So they'd all watched TV, and then by about 10 o'clock that evening, they all put themselves to bed.
Mrs. Graves was found by her sister the following morning. Initially, she thought that her sister was sleeping in. She shouted out, her door was slightly ajar, the door to her bedroom, and there was no response. She thought perhaps she was lying in. And it was only later when she went in through that door, she saw Mrs. Graves' legs sticking out under the duvet and realised that she was cold. And in panic, of course, naturally, she then rang the police.
Was this a planned murder? Had Valerie been targeted?
For me, there would have been a number of hypotheses. The first one is that this was possibly a family member. You know, there'd been a dispute that evening and things have got out of hand and, you know, and unfortunately Valerie's been assaulted. Another hypothesis is that she was targeted, but you then think, well, who would know she was there? This isn't her home address, so is she under surveillance by somebody? Is there a relationship that's gone wrong in the past that somebody is looking to assault and injure Valerie?
Well, the police found it extremely difficult to ascertain why someone would attack Mrs. Graves. She was well-known, well-liked, well-loved, and they found it very difficult to imagine anyone would target her.
Police had already ruled out Valerie's distraught family and find nothing in her background which could suggest someone holds a grudge against her.
They thought, perhaps naturally, that it was a case of mistaken identity, an attacker wanting to seek vengeance on someone for some reason.
The people that owned the house, there were all sorts of rumours that went round about them, and hitmen men and all sorts of silly rumours.
Rumours even spread that the house had been advertised on a site for swingers wanting sex parties, and that the family had been there at the wrong time.
There was a lot of wild rumour and speculation at the time. Some of it completely untrue, some of it perhaps a little bit more close to the truth.
But with no real clues coming forward, police home in on one explanation.
Some of these villages, people are of the mindset they don't have to lock their doors, whereas if you live in a city centre, you're probably more likely to do that. Was this an opportunist burglar who just happened to be in the area? Again, unlikely, I would have thought, because it's such a remote location, and therefore, was it a burglar who knew exactly what they were going for? because they knew that the occupants were away.
Police now believe Valerie's murder was the result of a burglary gone wrong, and that the burglar knew the owners were due to be away. But even that theory throws up questions.
What seemed rather peculiar was that if it was a burglary, why was nothing taken? Seems rather a lot of effort and savagery, for want of a better word, to then leave empty-handed. So they were mystified, absolutely mystified.
Having already tested thousands of locals for their DNA and come up blank, and despite offering a reward for information leading to an arrest, police are still no closer to a suspect. And then, everything changes.
On the 10th of July 2019, Cristian Sabu was arrested at his home address in Romania. He was asked whether he'd killed Valerie Graves.
But who is Cristian Sabu? And what would he know about such a brutal and bloody murder all those years ago? 5.5 years after the brutal murder of grandmother Valerie Graves in the village of Bosham, West Sussex, there's been a development.
The police got in touch with us in July 2019 to let us know that an arrest had been made for Valerie's murder. This came as a huge shock to everybody. It seemed to come out of nowhere at all.
Hearing the name Valerie Graves come up again in the news was quite a shock, and yeah, hearing that they'd made an arrest.
The man is 28-year-old Cristian Sabu. But what had led to an arrest of a man in Romania so long after the murder?
Years had passed since the brutal murder of Valerie, and the police finally had a breakthrough in that they had been contacted by email by a lady in Transylvania, in Romania, indicating that her husband was responsible for the murder.
But who is he? Did he kill Valerie, and why?
What the police have managed to establish is back in 2013, Cristian Sabu had moved from Romania over to England and was living in a caravan on the A27 in West Sussex, very close to Bosham. Some suggestion he was looking for work, may have done a bit of scrap metal dealing, but also some local odd jobs as well in the area.
Cristian Sabu left the UK and went back to Romania. That is where he lived with his partner, had a child, lived a normal, as it turns out, law-abiding life.
But 5 years later, Cristian Sabu's partner and mother of his 2 children tips off police that her husband is the killer.
When the police receive information like this, you have to be very cautious in the first instance. You have to question what the motive is for this female to come forward and say that Cristian Sabu was responsible for the murder. I understand they were going through some matrimonial difficulties at that time. So, you know, was her motive to try and, get him into trouble when perhaps he may have been an innocent person?
His wife had seen on Google that he'd been searching about the murder.
He'd been checking out the reporting of the Valerie Graves murder in Bosham back in 2013. And at that time, her and her husband were living just down the road on the A27 in West Sussex.
And she recognised the hammer that he'd been looking at. And she confronted him and asked him, isn't this the hammer that you had in England?
But reporting her suspicions to police is not enough to arrest Cristian Sabu for murder. They need irrefutable proof to secure a European arrest warrant to bring him back to the UK. Focus turns back to the hammer found discarded near the crime scene. Could this now hold the key to solving the case?
What the police did have was this partial male DNA profile, which could either implicate or eliminate Cristian Sabu very, very easily if we had his DNA.
But Cristian Sabu appears to have lived a crime-free life. His DNA is not on the UK or European police database, so they turned to his partner for help.
The police had to think long and hard as to how were they going to get a DNA sample from Christian Sabu without alerting him, because if we do alert him, then, you know, without arresting him, he could disappear and then we may never catch him. And so what they asked for through the Romanian police and Christian Sabu's wife was to get DNA samples from his 2 children, which could then show a familial link to the partial DNA profile. And that's what they did.
And the results changed the course of the now cold murder investigation.
It came back as a likeliness that the partial DNA profile that they had found on the hammer was linked to Christian Sabu.
And then, of course, under a European arrest warrant, to bring Mr. Sabu, to his credit, without any fuss, he didn't object, he cooperated fully, and he was then brought to England.
I felt really sorry for his wife. Finding out this news must have been really horrific. This is someone that she's been married to for some time, she has children with. It must have been a real devastating blow to her. She must have feared for her own safety and for her children. I can't imagine what was going through her mind at the time. It must have been really horrible. And I imagine she was probably torn as well. This is the man that she's married to, that she no doubt loves. And she's probably in a really difficult situation.
On 19th July 2019, Christian Sabu is extradited to the UK.
The feeling in the village and the surrounding areas was just pure relief. People felt like, at last, this had been solved.
Sabu appears at Brighton Magistrates Court, charged with the murder of Valerie Graves.
Mr. Sabu presented as a thoroughly normal man. Uncomplicated. He was uncomplicated from the moment I met him. He was quiet. He wasn't a man of many words, though of course we had an interpreter. He still was not a man who spoke much. He was still, I thought, even with all the years, he was 22 at the time of the incident, 28 when I met him. He was still in shock. That was my belief about what had happened. He couldn't explain it to himself. And he was remorseful.
The man standing before court is at odds with the description of such a brutal killing.
He basically admitted the crime. He said that, you know, he had little money, he was aware of the house, he knew that there were valuables inside that house, and more importantly, he knew that the owners were away over the Christmas period. So when he broke in, he was surprised to see Valerie, who confronted him. He had the hammer in his possession, and sadly, he then beat her with that hammer.
In November 2019, Christian Sabu takes the stand at Lewes Crown Court.
It was always the intention that he would be pleading guilty to the murder of Mrs. Graves.
He did say that he felt bad about it. He didn't mean to hurt her. He told the court how he had something to drink, cycled to the property in the belief that the property was empty. He'd gone there to burgle the place, effectively, and he was shocked to find Valerie there. He said that he panicked, and that's when the attack took place. He said that he'd never meant to hurt her.
What remains perhaps a mystery to this day is why Mr. Sabu, on realising that there was someone in that room and in the house, simply didn't turn and leave. But he did strike her several times with extreme force. And I think only he will know what was going through his mind, but clearly full of panic. Alcohol, panic, stupidity.
Summing up the case, the judge accepted that Sabu had not intended to kill, and sentenced him to 24 years in prison.
The judge on sentencing, Christian Sabu, said this: Mrs. Graves' head injuries were so severe that her maximum survival time would have been less than an hour. This was a sustained attack, and the terror and trauma for her in the final few minutes of her life is unimaginable. You had gone to those premises intending to burgle them, to steal from a safe you believed contained a lot of money. You took with you the hammer. You say you had been told the owners were away and therefore were unaware that Valerie, her mum, her sister and her sister's partner would all be in the house. It appears you entered the house via the patio doors in the room in which Mrs. Graves was sleeping. When you realised your mistake, namely that the room was occupied, rather than simply running away in the hope you couldn't be identified by a woman waking from sleep, you launched this horrific attack on Mrs. Graves, who had been asleep in that room. It was your dishonesty and greed that took you to the house. It was your cowardice and lack of morality that caused you to kill Valerie Graves.
7 years since the murder of Valerie Graves, the village of Bosom is slowly returning to normal. But the crime still lingers over them.
Although this had gone on for such a long time, it was in the forefront of a lot of people's minds. There was always that feeling of who did it. And I'm sure many of the men in the area perhaps felt they might have been looked at.
I mean, I was very glad that he got caught, because it meant you can just go back to normal life. Whereas before, you do have this nickel in the background that somebody's murdered somebody from locally, because who else would go there? For a long time we did think it must be somebody around here. I mean, who else could have done it?
I think the general feeling was one of relief that actually, you know, the chap had been found and the family could get some peace. Also that it wasn't someone in the village. I think that was, you know, even after all that time, I think that was still a bit of a relief that it wasn't a chap living up the road or, you know, someone you may know.
And the family of Valerie Graves can finally try to rebuild their lives.
We have had to endure 6 years of waiting, not knowing if anyone would ever be brought to justice for this cowardly act. Mum was very much loved by our family, but sorely missed by us all.